Hi, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Andy Lymer. I'm the Treasurer at St Andrew's Church, and this is our summary 2019 report. You should have access to both my written report and to the full accounts in the annual review and separately on our website if you want to have access to that. But what I'd like to do is just to give you a brief summary of the overview of what that story tells us of our accounts for this year. So firstly, let's think about our income. This chart shows the details of our income for the year. As you can see, we received just over £250,000 during the year. That's a 41% increase on what received in 2019. That seems like a really significant increase. And in part, that's because we've done a couple of new things during 2019 that we weren't doing in previous years. In particular, we launched the Blessing Fund, and also critically, we've started to engage with and operate a debt centre, the Cap Malvern Debt Centre, and all of that information and that new income has come into St Andrews because we oversee both of those activities. So that explains at least a part of that 41% increase, if that seems very large. I've shown on this pie chart some details of how our income breaks down. As you can see, more than a third of all of our income comes via bank transfers. That's those of you who have standing orders paying money into our accounts directly, but we have a whole variety of other sources of income there, from money on the plate on a Sunday when we're able to meet, from envelopes. Tax refunds are very important to us. If you're able to gift aid money to the church, that makes a really significant difference. We're able to reclaim 25 pence in every £1 that you give to us if you have income tax that exceeds the amount of giving that you give to the church. And I've detailed some other areas in which we receive some income there for you. How does that compare with how we've operated over the last few years? Well, this shows our income over the last 6 years, 2014 through 2019. And in particular, I wanted you to note the last 3 years. If you see there, we've increased by 1.6%. 1.6 times over the last 3 years. So quite a significant increase in income. But as I say, that's explained at least in part by including Cap Malvern and now most recently the launching of the Blessing Fund. So that's the income side. What about the expenses and the expenditure side? Obviously, we look as a church to try and match together our income and our expenditure so that we're not spending more money than we're receiving. And this is how we spent money over the 2019 calendar year. We spent in total just over £233,000, and that in itself was also a 51% increase on what we received in the previous year. Again, a key reason for that, of course, is because of the introduction of some new activities, the running of the CAP Centre, which has its own associated costs, and then starting to give some money away through the Blessing Fund, although that was only a very small amount. This pie chart now shows you the details of what our expenditure looks like for the year. Most of you will be aware, I think, that by far our largest expenditure, £88,000 actually in 2019, was our parish share. That's the contribution we make to the diocese, which in returns pays for the salaries and the housing cost for Dave and the family, and also contributes towards Peter's costs and the family. So that's we don't pay their salaries directly. Our parish share contributes towards that, and also a share of the other running costs of the diocese, and a contribution towards some other churches where their ability to pay their parish share may not cover the full cost of being able to provide their clergy. So that's our parish share. We employ a number of people, so our second largest cost is a combination of our administrators and the costs that we now put into young people by having having staff working in that area. So that gives you some detail of what our expenditure looks like. How does that compare with what we've engaged with over the last few years? Well, here is the figure for the last few years since 2012, and you'll see in particular a significant growth of our expenditure over the last 3 years as we've done a whole range of new activities. One I highlighted a couple of years ago as an area that we desperately needed to grow, those of you who have been around for a few years, was our children and young people's work, and that has grown hugely over the last few years with Helen and with Eddie and with the team that are engaged in our young people's activity. And overall, including the costs of our expenditure on the CAP debt centre, our expenditure has doubled in the last 3 years to just over £233,000, as I said on the previous slide. As a church, we give away money. We give away a whole range of money into different forms, and I've indicated on this next slide now a couple of those areas where we particularly give to support organisations that are not local to Malvern, as well as some organisations that are, that I've indicated on the bottom here, like the CAP Malvern running costs that we donated £5,000 towards in 2019. Of our what I've called away giving, giving to organisations that are not based in Malvern, that amounted to about 11% of our voluntary income, just over £12,000, and I've detailed on the slide there the organisations that we gave to in the year. A number of those we've been giving to for quite a few years, but in particular the last two were new mission organisations that we supported: Terry English through the Josiah Ventures Trust and Open Doors as two new external partners that we support. We also, as you can see, one from bottom there on the slide, provide some money to local mission, to sometimes our young people who are going on mission and for other purposes. So overall, we give away quite a lot of our income. So what does that tell us in summary? If you remember the two figures from the income and expenditure, our overall income does exceed our expenditure in the year by just over £19,000. So we've had a surplus. We've had more income in than we've needed to spend to be able to run the church and to give money away in the way we'd planned. And so what we actually did in the early part of 2020 is use that surplus to be able to plan for doing a number of things. One, you'll now notice we have some new doors on the church. Those of you who have been able to visit the church recently, we've now got sliding doors on the church, and that has cost us some money that came out of the surplus. We gave some extra to the parish share, some extra giving over and above what was asked of us to be able to contribute a little bit more to the costs of the diocese. You'll be aware, I'm sure, that the diocese is facing a number of financial challenges because of what's been going on during 2020, and we gave into that at an early part of the year that has provided some money to be able to continue to support the diocese over and above the minimum that they asked us to give. We've also been able to set aside money for a number of other things, including some extra gifts to some of our partners and to an extra promise to some money to St Mary's for their building fund. So that gives you an overview of what's happened in 2019. Of course, some of you will be saying that's lovely, but we're now October 2020. So while our APCM this year is very late, and so I'm focusing on news which is quite old in many ways, I thought it would be helpful if I just gave you a little bit of a view of 2020. In 2019, as I've just shown you, our income exceeded our expenditure. 2020 has been a very different year, as you won't be surprised to hear. Our income to date, up to the end of September, has been just over £127,000, and our expenditure has been £126,000. That means, good news, our income has been just slightly more than our expenditure. Obviously, that's a good position to be in if we can. However, we are aware that there are a number of costs which are going to be incurred between now and the end of the year that we know are coming. I've listed them there: paying for the new doors, continuing to pay salaries, paying our contribution to parish share, and a number of others, as well as reduced income that we've been facing over the year, means to say that I am predicting that if things carry on as they currently do, Unlike last year where we had a £19,000 surplus, we're actually potentially going to face approximately a £19,000 deficit this year. Our expenditure will be around £19,000 more than our income. So I point that out to you so that you can prayerfully consider what the implications of that might be. Obviously, as a PCC, we've been looking at whether we could cut back on any of our expenditure, trying to reduce that. And alternatively, of course, we may look to find ways of increasing our income. I leave that one with you. Who engages with managing the money within St Andrews? I've listed the details here of the finance team in case you want to know who is involved and who might be the right person to ask any finance related questions to. You can always bring any issues to me. My name is Andy Lymer again, and my details are in the church directory. Very happy for you to ring me or send me an email at any point. But there's a number of others that are involved in the team. Marion in particular deals with the day-to-day bookkeeping and management of our income and expenditures and tracking all of that. Valerie Jameson looks after the gift aid, and if you wish to give via the envelope system, then she's the person to speak to about that. Chris hopes when we're able to collect cash, Chris manages the cash for us and makes sure it's all appropriately counted and banked on a Sunday and other cash that we have. And also we have another very important member of our team, Paul Lithgow. Paul is not involved in the day-to-day running of the accounts, but plays a really critical role at the end of the year in helping us draw together the summary details that I've provided for you and making sure everything balances and everything adds up to the right amount. And he plays an absolutely critical role in doing that. He's done that for quite a number of years, and we're hugely grateful for the role that Paul plays in making sure our accounts balance properly. We also have this year made use of an external accountant to help us with doing the final accounting and making sure that we're complying with all the rules that we need to for reporting to the various people that we have to share our accounts with. So I wanted to say a particular thank you to those people who make up the finance team. As I conclude, you might be asking, this is all great, you've highlighted that we've got a deficit, our income is going to be less probably than our expenditure during this year. How might I give? If you're not aware of the various ways to give, I've just given some information briefly on this slide, put the bank account details there. You can give via envelopes. There are various direct ways of giving to us through CAF, through stewardship, through the payroll giving if you're an employee and your employer enables you to do that. Cash, of course, is welcome too. That's a little easier to do when we're meeting on a Sunday and collecting, which hopefully we'll be able to do again at some point in the not too distant future, but cash is always welcome. One of the other things that we have done this year that you might not be aware of is we've also set up a facility to be able to give online to the church. If you go and visit our website and access the St Andrews giving page, you'll find there are two different approaches there that will enable you to give directly online if that's something that you would like to do and you feel comfortable with. So we also have a mechanism there to give directly. If you've got any questions about how to give and what's the right way to do that, or if you've given some money perhaps online and you want to check it's received correctly for your own peace of mind, then of course my details are given in the directory. Please feel free to drop me an email or get in touch with me by phone, and I'll happily check that all is in good order. Just as a final comment, for those of you who are able, if you are an income tax payer, and you can gift aid to us and you're not already, it would be hugely valuable for you, for us, if you could gift aid to us. Doesn't cost you any extra money. The money you pay in income tax, the government will give us part of that back in proportion to your giving. And for every £1 you give us, we're able to reclaim 25 additional pence of that tax that you paid to the government to add to our income. So if you don't already gift aid and are able to, you can see that would make quite a significant difference to our overall income. If you need to ask any questions about how to give, then please let myself or any member of the finance team know. So that's the end of my report now. Dave has to do a couple of things as part of the general agenda to ask you to note the accounts, and particularly to appoint our independent examiner for next year. And I'll have Dave do that as part of the agenda rather than me deal with it as part of this report. But thank you for listening to this and for your attention. If I can help at any point with any information, the details of the 2019 accounts, if you want to understand more than the overview I've been able to provide for you, if you want to be able to understand where we are in 2020, you want to be able to think about different ways of giving to us, then please feel free to ask any questions you like. I'll be delighted to hear from you. So thank you very much. On behalf of the PCC, thank you very much for your generosity this year, from my side in the way in which you give finance, but in the way in which you give in so many other ways other than just money. So we're hugely grateful, and thank you for your attention to my report this year. Thank you.